All right, this is a big one. So this one makes me a little bit nervous because I'm going to tell you what the for-profit trade schools do not want you to know. Now, these schools have very deep pocket with very powerful people who have made a lot of money with these schools, and they don't want anybody saying anything negative out there. I've worked for schools all the way from Florida, Texas, Arizona, Nevada, and I've seen multiple different schools with a lot of the same agendas. So I'm going to put this information out there to help you, but you guys need to realize me putting this information out there puts a big giant target on my back and closes a lot of doors. This is going to upset a lot of people, but I feel that people need to at least know the truth. Now, not all of the schools operate this way, and if a school doesn't operate this way, they shouldn't be upset about it because it won't apply to them. The schools that should be upset about it are the ones that do apply to them because they know the truth is coming out and they don't want that to happen. So let's get started. We're going to start off with marketing. These schools have a huge marketing budget and they market massively. They do tons of tests to find out who is going to best be reached by this marketing. Now, marketing doesn't mean it's going to be a bad thing, but how these schools market, man, it's really, really catchy. So any keyword you put about school or HVAC, they immediately start bombarding you with marketing. You'll start to see it pop up on Facebook and Instagram or whatever the social media that's popping at the time. It will just bombard everything. So you're just seeing that school constantly popping up. Or there'll be another company that has, hey, learning about schools, and they'll start sending you to multiple schools, or the school will pay them money for every lead that they get. So marketing is a big deal. They just simply bombard you with it. And once you give them an email or a phone call, they're going to be calling you and emails nonstop until you tell them flat out, do not contact me again. It is very, very aggressive. They also look for people that are specifically unemployed or whatever, and they have these marketing groups, these studies that they go with to actually apply the force to the people that they want. And typically these are people that have never gone to college before, which sounds good, but they know they're going to sell the college dream to somebody that doesn't know any about it, doesn't know how to research this stuff. So they apply to get all those people in, and they want anybody with a pulse, anybody that can sign a dotted line. They want everybody in there. And they say, it's going to sound great for you. So the marketing is huge, search engines, social media, emails, phone calls, and they're going to be saying things like, we have small classes, only 20 to 25 students. In a classroom, 20 to 25 students may not be a big deal, maybe manageable, but you get a lab and you have, say, 6 units, maybe 8 units that operate, maybe only 2 units that operate, and you got 20 or 25 people in a very small class, maybe 4 hours, and you got all these people trying to get their hands on that unit with one instructor trying to answer all the questions, keep everybody safe. 20 to 25 students is a big class in a lab. It is very difficult to maintain, but they always say, oh, it's a small class, only 20 to 25 students. I'm telling you guys, being an instructor, that is a big class. And some instructors can handle it and do it, but it is very stressful for the instructor. So a small class, a manageable class, like 15 students is a great size for a class. And it depends on the class and the students. You get a lot of people that have a lot of special needs and you're not able to teach them everything you need. You end up having to cut things short just to make it through the day. Sometimes just putting gauges on and off a unit, which takes no more than a couple of minutes, might be a full 4-hour class, just that one thing alone. So when I say small classes, you got to be careful how they're applying that. The other thing they're going to say is tools. We're going to give you these tools. Look at the tools you get. And you don't know any better. Like, oh, great, this is a great set of tools. But ultimately, that is like this much of the tools you're going to need. And maybe some of those are going to be out of date. And sometimes I've seen some really cheap tools in there. You go to Harbor Freight and get the tools you need. So don't rely on those tools being a good thing. You want to make sure that you're going to be investing a decent amount of money. You're probably looking at $5 grand or so to be investing in tools. And that toolkit they're giving you is maybe $300, maybe $500, sometimes even $100. So that toolkit, don't get too excited about those tools and all the flash. And sometimes they only say those toolkits are if you graduate on time. So they won't even give you a toolkit after you went through the whole entire program. There's all these little catches in there, all this little fine print that you'll never be able to understand. Then they're going to talk about placements. Like, oh, we have an 80% placement rate. Well, wait a minute. HVAC is in huge demand all across the country. And you only placed 80% of your graduates. Why didn't you place 100% of your graduates? And also the placement rate, we'll talk about later, how they obscure and use those numbers. 80% is what the government requires. It's their bare minimum number. So that's the number that they aim for. That's like a 70 for them. So the marketing's a big side of it. Understanding how the marketing works helps prepare you of what you're going to run into. Now let's talk about admissions. Another word for admissions is sales or a salesperson. Now that's not a bad thing to be a salesperson, but these people have agendas that they have to solve. And these are good people. They're just trying to make a living and get through life. And I've seen some admissions people that really struggled with what they had to deal with of selling people. And some admissions people just don't last long. Sometimes we'd go to schools and they would say, hey, don't even learn their names because they come in and out so often. Admissions have to make so many calls a day, dry calls. They're recorded and monitored on how many calls they make. So they sit there just dialing numbers, trying to get people to come in or enroll or talk to somebody about enrolling. So that's a very high stress. Then they have a quota for every student they have to enroll. They have every month they have to meet these quotas, and they're not official quotas, but they have to meet their numbers or make their numbers match, all these kind of things. And if they don't enroll enough students, boom, they're out and they put somebody else in, and they'll replace these people over and over and over again. Even a good admissions rep, they get 2 bad months, bye, you're out, somebody else comes in. The accredited schools will have things that they can't say. They're restricted. You cannot say this and you cannot say that. So it gives them a little bit of a window that they have to operate in, but some of these non-accredited schools can say just about whatever that they want. And they won't promise you how much you'll make, but they'll paint this picture like you're making all this money coming out of school. You get this great toolkit. Like they paint this picture. So you got to be very careful of that. You got to know those tactics. I can't tell you what you should ask for, because if word gets out what to ask for, immediately you're going to start training their admissions team how to overcome anything that you ask them. So it doesn't really matter what you ask them, they're going to be trained to overcome any obstacle you put in front of them. They're going to be talking about hands-on. Do you like to learn with a book or hands-on? Well, everybody's going to say hands-on, and they paint it like they're going to be doing all this hands-on work. But if you look in the curriculum, it may be 75% classroom and 25% hands-on. The school actually gets more accredited value for a classroom than they do with the hands-on. It gives them more credit hours, so to speak. So when you look at hands-on, it may be a very small amount, or maybe someone will say, oh, we get 50% hands-on. But when it comes down to it, it may not actually be that way. It could even be a very small amount. They only need to pass that for the accreditation side. So when they're talking about, oh, do you like to learn hands-on? That's just part of the bait, because everybody's going to say, yeah, I don't want to read. And they paint this picture that may not be true. A big one that I have an issue with is they find the pain point. At multiple schools I've been to, they will find the pain point. One of the things is they want to talk to you, make sure it's going to be a good fit for you. We want to see if this school is going to be right for you. And what they really want to do is tell me about yourself, so they can find these pain points. And they want to find out what the pain point is in your life, because they want to then magnify that. Look how horrible your life is right now. You have just ruined your life. Now, let's fix it. Come to our school and everything's going to be great, and Bambi's going to be in the forest and the bunnies are going to be singing, and it's going to solve all of your problems. So you got to be careful. They're going to be looking for the negative in your life because they want that pain point. If they make it look painful, then they can show how to fix it. Then they get you on the hook and boom, it's enrolled. Big thing they're going to be doing is doing the push. Hey, classes are about to fill up. You got to sign up now because the classes are going to fill up. We're going to give the seat away to somebody else. When they're pushing you for that, that's like every sales rep or every admissions rep throughout the entire country. They're pushing to get you to enroll now because they need that enrollment. So if they're true, I've really never seen a class completely fill up for the for-profit schools. Now, other community colleges stuff, those classes definitely fill up and they have limits. What I see what happens with a for-profit school, when they reach their maximum time, they'll just figure out how to put a lab assistant in there. Oh, if we have a lab assistant, we can have more than 25 people. We can have 35 people. We just have somebody that graduated, stick them in there with the instructor, and now we can make those numbers even more, and it's more profitable. So when they're saying that class is going to fill up, you got to be very, very nervous about that. They're also going to say, we're going to help you find a job. Well, you got to be careful on that too, but there's a lot of little trickeries that go in with that. And typically they just want to get you placed so they meet their numbers. Getting you that good job or a good paying job isn't in there. They're just going to get you a job. Did you touch the thermostat at work? Well, congratulations, you're placed. We got you a job. Now we get our numbers. A saying through multiple schools I've been through, when you get to know the admissions people, is they'll say, you never lose a potential student to a better school. You only lose them to a better admissions rep. That's saying that it doesn't matter how good the school is, it's the rep. So I find that a problem. There are better schools than another. So they're saying it doesn't matter how crummy or great a school is, you being a good admissions rep should be able to enroll everybody. So those are some things that you'll find with admissions, and there's a lot more that goes into that. And I'm not saying these are bad people. These are trained. They're trained to do these things. They're trained to think this way. And they're always about, oh, it's going to be best for the students. You're going to be changing lives. Changing lives. You got to get these people to sign up so you can change their lives. Well, there is a truth to that. Some of these people need that extra push to get forward, but ultimately that's not their real goal. Their real goal is to get as many people. You got a pulse, great. You're going to be fantastic with HVAC. Let's sign you up, get you enrolled. They don't really care if it's going to be good for you or not. I've seen students with all kinds of issues that I'm thinking, I don't think this is going to be right. Students that had a lot going on in their life and the stress of going to school isn't going to be right for them, and they sign them up anyways. Now the instructor is not going to be able to say anything about that because they will immediately get reprimanded. So admissions has that little catch, that dark side to it. Once you get past admissions, they're going to put you into enrollments where they're going to find you grants and they're going to find you loans and all kinds of stuff. So a lot goes into that. Let's start off with this 90-10 rule. The government says if your school is so great that 90% of your students could be on a loan or a student loan, then at least 10% of your students should be able to pay cash right out. If you have that great of a school, at least 10% should be able to buy the program straight out. Now, they got that rule. They're going to work that number any way that they possibly can. Ultimately, you won't see 10% paying out of their pocket for a class. I have had very few students actually paying for that program straight out. In the 11, 12 years I've been teaching, it just doesn't happen. So how they get around that is they put 90% of your loan on a student loan system and the other 10% you're having to pay out of pocket. So now you've paid 10% and 90% is a loan. That's how they work their way around that. So it's really, really tricky. They can also sometimes use private loans. Some companies don't allow this, and some of the government restrictions have closed this down a lot, but they'll say, hey, 90% is a student loan with a low interest rate. The other 10%, we're going to put you on a private loan. Or if you can't get a student loan, we'll find a private loan for you. You got to be very careful of these private loans because the interest rates on these can be skyrocket high. At least a student loan has a set interest rate that's usually pretty low, affordable, but these private loans, oh man, they can be 20, 25% interest or more, and you'll be paying that interest back over and over, and you never get that principal paid down. Then you end up with the default and collections. Once you default on a student loan, it doesn't go away in a bankruptcy. They're trying to change that now, but you get through a bankruptcy, you're still stuck with that student loan. And anybody that co-signed for you or anybody you co-signed for, that's going to ride out until it's either paid or you're dead. Like, they do not give up on that. I've seen students before that died and they're still on the hook for the student loan. Now there's things that's supposed to stop that, but they won't tell you that. They're simply going to keep going after you and after you and after you. You got to be very careful of the debts and what you're signing up for because they're not going to stop. And then we end up with the military students, which if you're in the military, thank you for your service. I appreciate the fact that you put your life on the line for America. That is incredible and that's awesome. And you deserve to have that education. But the schools are using that military to fit on that 10%. So these schools that get that military funding, they cater to the military because that helps them fill this 10% rule and gives them a lot more leeway. Some of the schools that have the military students, they don't care if the military student learns anything. They cater to them. Look, you just got to show up. We'll give you whatever you want. Now, I believe the military gave that option to help train and benefit people. Now, if you don't want to work after you get through this entire program, that is fully and 100% your choice. And thank you for that service and thank you for your learning. However, there are some of the situations where the schools abuse that. Hey, look, we don't care. Just stay at school. You don't like school, just stay here anyways because they want to get that money. It's a sure thing, 100% paid students. So they want to, you'll see those students sometimes roaming the halls and not doing anything. Now, most of my military students were awesome students. They wanted the structure. They wanted to learn. Whether they wanted to do air conditioning or not afterwards, they still actively wanted to learn and pursue that. But some of the ones that simply, they break in the rules, the school breaks the rules also. Hey, we just want to get that money. So here, we'll bend these rules, we'll bend those rules. I've seen some really dirty stuff happening with that. So they'll be catering to the military side just so that they can make sure they get that military money. Also end up with some social service programs. Those a lot of times also count for that 10% rule. So you get somebody that has failed at everything else at life and they want to put them in HVAC. Now I love the opportunity for somebody to change their life. That's the big reason I love teaching. But some of these people have had mental issues. For example, I had a student that couldn't remember anything in 24 hours. He couldn't remember, so he would come to school and then he would go home and then he would come back not remembering anything happened the day before. The staff would have to help him get to the right class every single day. And I was thinking, what in the world is going on? All we're doing is collecting the government's money at that point. I've seen some students that had no interest whatsoever at learning, but they're going through that government program for whatever reason. Those are some issues. If the student's going to be having a government program helping them, fantastic, I love that. But if that student has zero interest in learning and cares not about learning to improve himself, then why is the government paying for that student to learn? Now that being said, I've had some students come through that program that changed their lives, but they wanted to learn it. They strived to learn that information. They strive to be better and they have changed their entire lives. I'm not talking about those students are awesome. Those students need that assistance. I love that assistance for those. I'm talking about the schools abusing that system to make sure they keep those students coming through so they can get cashed in and cashed out. That interest and the amount of debt you have, I've seen students that have had massive amounts of debt. Now they went through this whole entire program. The job they're getting isn't all that great. And now what they're paying for interest and loans puts them worse than they were before they ever came to school. Their interest rate is so high, they'd be better off if they'd not gone to school or gone straight into the field without learning to school at all, because their interest rate is so high, their debt that they're paying back is so high. They're paying back their debt for so long. The government comes in and ends up taking all their tax returns and taking anything else they can money-wise, and they just can't keep up with it. And once you default on student loans, it crushes a whole lot of your other debts. So you got to be very, very careful. They're also going to be talking about, oh, we're going to get you a grant. We're going to find some kind of grant. That's going to drop your loan down. But a lot of times you'll see that the interest rate on the loan is so much higher. Maybe they can't get a government loan, so they're going to put them completely in a private loan. That interest rate is so high, anything you get with these grants, don't even touch it. They're always promising, oh, let's get you a grant. Sometimes those grants are actually very small and they really fluff them up, or the school will throw some discount in there as some kind of a scholarship program, or all these little things to make sure they get you enrolled. And once they get you enrolled, they know they have you. All right, let's move on to the education side. So the education thing, man, this is what it's about. We get through all this, good or bad, ugly, whatever. Let's get to the education side. But almost every school I've been to had this saying right here. And in their company meetings, they had this. The school is a business that happens to be a school. Or it's a business first and a school second. We have to be profitable. And I get that. Hey, if you want to be a for-profit school and you're going to be a business, you got to make some money. But you can't do that at the cost of education. If you're going to have a burger joint and sell burgers, you can't just collect the money and then not give the burgers. Oh, here's a couple of pieces of bread. Where's the meat? We're a business, so it's okay. It doesn't work that way. If you're going to sell an education, you need to actually deliver that education. And a lot of these schools, not all of them, there's some good schools out there again, but there's some of these schools that are really do not care about the education. And here's some things you can see about that. The qualified instructors. And when I mean qualified instructors, I don't mean your instructor needs to know everything, but has your instructor actually had some field experience? Or are they just a student that graduated? Now, nothing against the student that's really smart that can try to handle that, but it's not fair to that student, and it's not fair to all the other students that are in the class. The guy has no field experience. He needs to go out and learn and apply this first. So I've seen it where they put the janitor in front of a class. So they put somebody from the medical side. Hey, just go through these PowerPoints. It'll be fine. I've had them move people from admissions or plumbing or even automotive. There's a guy that was an automotive guy, a motorcycle guy. He's teaching air conditioning. And now that he's taught it long enough, now all of a sudden he's a qualified instructor. These are things that should be scary to you. Now, no instructor really is qualified. I'm not a qualified instructor because there's still so much to learn. But the catch is I have some experience and I care about learning, and I'm still actively learning more. And a lot of instructors out there are really great instructors that really care about learning, but there's some schools out there that they'll just hire whoever. Now on that, talking about these instructors, there's a lot of instructors. It may not be exciting, they may not have full of energy, but they have a ton of knowledge. They care about education and they care about continuously learning. That's what makes a good instructor. But because these schools are a business first, they will pay the instructor the absolute bare possible minimum that they can get away with. And they try to tell the instructor, well, you need to give back to your community. Well, you're not working in an attic anymore, so we can pay you a third or a quarter of what you're making. There's many times students come out making more than what these instructors make. They absolutely treat the instructors horribly. And the big thing is they don't respect the instructor. They don't respect the experience that they've gone through. I've had a lot of people that wanted to teach. They'd be great, amazing instructors. They literally could not afford to put their whole family at risk to teach. You're talking about teaching at morning, teaching at night, every night being away from your family and doing that for this crumb money. Meanwhile, the admissions reps are making money, the marketing people's making money, enrollment's making money, the owner's making a ton of money, and the instructors are telling them, oh, you just need to do this out of the goodness of your heart. Well, nobody else is doing it out of the goodness of their heart. All the administration, all the other people are making tons of money, and they want to pay that instructor bottom line. So these are some things that's an issue. So you find a good instructor, that's a good thing. You want to hold on to it. That instructor can make that program or break that program. I've seen instructors that really cared about their program and they pour their heart into it. That's ideally what you want. Unfortunately, a lot of these schools just do not care about the qualification of the instructor, and they do not care how much they pay them. For example, I've been teaching for 10 or 11 years, hardly received any raises at all. I've even taken pay cuts as being director so that I could hire a better qualified instructor. I took money out of my check so I could make sure I had an instructor that's qualified to make more money. So these are definitely problems. And I gotta be honest with you here, I've been a school director before and had the pressure of admissions and say, we are starting this class. You have to put somebody in front of that class. And I've put a student in front of that class. 100% wrong. I lose sleep over that. That's the thing that bothers me. That student that I did that to, it absolutely crushed him. Brilliantly smart guy. It was wrong of him to do that. It was wrong for me to agree to it. It's wrong for administration to act on that and to put that pressure on it. It was wrong all the way, and it's something I'm going to have to live with. But that's the dirty side of the business. I thought, well, for the greater good, I can still change more lives. But ultimately, it comes down to how they leverage and push you. Now let's move on to the operating lab equipment. So when you go through admissions, they're going to take you to the lab and show you this fancy lab. But there's some questions in there. Does that lab equipment even work? A lot of times it doesn't. It's made to look nice, but it doesn't work. Or it may work, but it only works because students are not allowed to touch it. I was at one school where they brought in a banker to run the school, and the banker wanted to start throwing away all of the useful stuff that we taught with. We had tons of stuff that's hands-on, tons of stuff for the students to practice with, but it looked junky. It didn't look like a bank should, so they got rid of and started throwing away all kinds of stuff. Now, they didn't give a budget to replace the stuff or put any good stuff in, but nope, they absolutely want to get rid of anything that could actually change the education. That's a big issue. When you don't care about the education, but you only care about how it looks, then that's a big problem. Then we have lab supplies. Because it's a business first, they won't want to spend any money on lab supplies. So you need to find the cheapest one. You need to give us the 3 bids and we'll get the cheapest one. To give you an example, when I was teaching in San Antonio, I made friends with a supply company and they donated to us thousands and thousands of dollars worth of supplies to use. All kinds of stuff they donated. And when it come time to buy, there was another company that had something for $5 less. We're talking about a big order that was ultimately $5 less. And they chose to buy from that company instead. Now the company had been donating is like, why didn't you buy from us? Oh, well, company B over here was $5 less. Really, they were $5 less. Well, I don't think we're going to be giving you any more donations anymore. We'll find another school that can appreciate it. $5, they lost thousands of dollars. I went all the way to the school president on that one. And the president's like, Ty, it's a business. You got to understand how business works. I'm like, I understand how business works. I ran a business, and if you're getting thousands of dollars in the locations, I will personally pay the $5. Also with lab supplies, it is so short on lab supplies. I myself has many times spent tons of money out of my own pocket to buy the lab supplies. I know a ton of instructors that spend money out of their own pocket to get lab supplies for the students to work with. We've done classes with oxyacetylene and brazing classes where the student can only have half of a brazing rod, or maybe they're going to splurge and give the students 1 brazing rod to work with. We're only allowed to spend this much room with copper, and we only use it for 1 day, and we know refills. Once the tank's empty, then we're done. Well, how can a student learn how to do their trade in a hands-on lab if they're not actually able to use any supplies to get that hands-on training? So these schools are so tight with the money, the students don't get the supplies they need to learn. So when they give the tour over here at admissions, look at all this great stuff that you'll be doing. In reality, the students hardly ever get to do anything with labs. One thing you can do if you want to check out a school is go during different breaks where the students are outside and talk to them. How much lab time do you really get? How do you do on supplies? How is your instructor? And also when you're going to schools, you can see, is anybody out in the parking lot drinking or getting high? A lot of these schools, you'll see where they're supposed to be having an education, everybody's just hanging out in the parking lot drinking or whatever, or there'll be security roaming around trying to keep people out of trouble, or there'll be police stationed outside. And it's okay to have security, but these people, when they're out there drinking and everything else, that should tell you a good idea what's going on with the school. They obviously don't care about the education, and in classroom they're not getting the education, so they're just hanging outside because they need to have the attendance. Which brings us to the next one, attendance. School needs the attendance for their accreditation. They need the accreditation so they can get the government money. So if they have that government money, that's that guaranteed loan stuff. So they want you to be there, and you can only miss so many days. Now you've been going to school all this time and you can't miss any days at all. You can only miss one day. Now that pressure is on that instructor because that instructor is graded entirely on if any students drop out or quit or fail or anything else. So if a student can't come, they have a death in the family, anything big happens, they're not able to come, they can only miss 1 or 2 days on that course. Other than that, they have to then start completely over, which affects their financial aid and everything else. So being there all the time, having no days off, imagine this, it's only a 10-month program, but you got to be there either 5 hours a day, 4 days a week, or 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, every single night, no matter what happens. You got to work late, family event. Nope, you got to be there. That's the rules. You got to be there. No shortcuts. You have to absolutely be there all the time. And that instructor is forced to push you to make sure you're there. Because if you're not there, the instructor is going to be reprimanded for it later on. Then we'll look at the passing side of it. Instructors have to pass everybody. I had a student that went through the entire program, and at the end he said that a compressor pumped the solid. That's what it did. He knew nothing about the course. He was a military student that didn't care about education at all. The school still passed him through. He had a 15 in the class. He didn't do any homework, any test, any lab work, did nothing. Had a grade of a 15. Like, you have to really work at getting that. He would just flat out refuse to do anything. Didn't know anything, had been passed through the whole entire course. Later, as his last class, he graduated. The school changed his grade so that he could graduate. I've had administrations change grades so many times. And if they made me change the grade, which I would refuse to do, they would write me up. And I've been written up many times, and they would still end up changing the students' grades. I had one student that flat out refused to take a final exam. He refused, said, nope, I'm not going to take it. I said, look, give me something. If you make even a 20 on it, it'll be enough points I can push you through. And he would, nope, I refuse to take it. Like, you're not going to graduate. He goes, I don't care. So he refused to take it, ended up failing. The school came back, had a big meeting with the whole entire school about how I needed to pass that guy. And lo and behold, they passed him anyways. The guy is still out there with the same diploma as the guy that was there every day wanting to learn and studying really hard. So this is the big part of that is attendance and passing. Look, you just need to show up and you got to have a pulse. No matter what, everything else you're going to pass. I would really prefer a student fail a program, not to hurt that student, but that student has more time to get the information they need. It didn't cost them any extra money when they would retake a class. If they failed the class and retook it, it never cost them any extra money. It only benefited that student. So pretty much I had to make sure it was okay with the student for them to be retaking that class, as well as convince the administration to be best for the student. Other than that, every single body passes. Also, what they teach in classes, they don't teach ductwork or airflow anymore because it's not fun. It's got too many numbers in it. When you're going to school, it's not all about just getting a job. It's not about just being fun. You need to have the bigger picture. And if they're not teaching airflow for air conditioning, it's really not really worth going to school for. So that's a big problem. And ductwork costs money to buy. So a lot of schools don't want to teach ductwork because, well, it's expensive. Students don't like it, so we'll just cut it out of the program. Then you also have the PowerPoints because they need to be able to put any single person in front of there, whether they know what they're talking about or not. They need to have a list of people to go through. So they put PowerPoints up. So that way the janitor can teach the class because all they have to do is read that PowerPoint to the students. Now, I've been personally written up before because I refuse to do PowerPoints. I would take the students to the lab and we would do the exact same information, get the same knowledge in the lab, but I was written up for it because I didn't follow through those PowerPoints. So a lot of these instructors are death by PowerPoints, not because they want to do PowerPoints, they are forced to do PowerPoints. So it's a big issue. Again, with the instructors, so many instructors out there that are good, great people, and their hands are absolutely tied behind their backs. They're not allowed to deliver the education, not allowed to buy the supplies, they're not allowed to use the lab as they need to. They've been beaten down so much by the administration of making sure everybody passes, and any student gets upset about anything, the student's always right, and it's always the instructor's wrong, that the instructors finally they stop caring as much. And I've seen it happen. It's happened to me where they just beat you down. Like, I had one day that I called in sick at a school over 3 years, and the owner came in and just berated me for it. I remember on my feet all the time working, so I got these fancy shoes with a spring on it to help my back wouldn't hurt from being on my feet all day long. And the school director absolutely berated me for it. And some of the politics that go on behind it, how the school administration will make you say this and make you run this hard line, and then the students come back through and they'll break their own rules just to make themselves look good. It's always the instructor's fault. Everything that happens in the school always falls back on the education department. Now let's move on to the career services. Their job is to make sure it's placement rates and resumes and all this. So to start out with career services, they really want to start with a pizza party for reviews. Now you can't reward somebody for a good review, but they found the loopholes. So what we can do is say, if we get X number of reviews, if we get 15, 20 reviews, we'll have a pizza party. So they get the reviews and they have a pizza party. Now if a student dare says anything negative, they'll bring that student in and they'll find out who they are. They will always find out who they are. And they're going to threaten them, we're not going to find you a good job. We're going to leave a bad record. We're going to tell other employers not to hire you. All of these horrible things to make sure they keep that student in control. They've even threatened them with legal action before, so it can be a big deal. Now the thing is, the student has to give a review on the school and their education before they even know if they have a good education. They haven't even gotten a job in the field yet, but they have to tell how good the school is and how great their education is. They don't even know if it's relevant or not, but they have to leave a positive review. Now we get into the career services. They don't know the trade. All they do is they need to find out who all the people are hiring in the trade, and they just say, how many people do you need? And they just keep sending people to them until somebody sticks. It doesn't matter that the employer needs this particular kind of person or this student would be better for this type of position. They just send everybody to that same employer. Whether the guy was forced to pass through the program or the guy was there every single day asking questions, actively learning, everybody goes to that same job, and the employer gets to hope his interview process is good enough to make a decision on who he's going to hire. So the school on the career services side, it's really a flip in the air. They just keep sending people until they get people placed. Sometimes it's really shady how they get that done. But the career services, they don't know the trade. They don't know the jobs. They just need to send everybody. They don't work with the instructors to say, would this student be better at this job? Now I've tried working with career services before, but ultimately they don't have time. They have all these different people from other programs as well, and they just got to get these people placed because that's all that really matters. To get them placed, they need to also start with their resume. So they're going, oh, we're going to help you build a resume. What they have is the same template. Maybe they have 3 templates, and every student that comes through there gets the exact same template. You can pretty much tell who's coming from what school because it's going to be the exact same template. The guy that was there acing it and the guy that didn't do nothing, they got the same resume. And on top of that, they'll have this list of skills. Hey, here's a list of skills. Pick some out and we'll put it in your resume. Pick out 10 of them. So they just go through and pick their favorite 10, put it in their resume and put it on there. And I've had career services before say, oh, Ty, we need these keywords because they're good for finding on these algorithms for LinkedIn. Well, those kind of jobs are typically not where you're starting entry level. They're looking for people with 5 years of experience. Later on, it will be relevant, but they just simply pick some skills. Hey, just pick some skills. Doesn't matter if you're good or actually know them or not. Just pick some and slap them on there. We just need to get you an interview so we can get you placed. So then once they get them placed, that's a very loose term as well. It depends on the accreditation company. Some schools have an accreditation company that says you have to be placed for 30 days. You have to stay with that same company for 30 days before they consider it placed. Others say, hey, you only got to be placed for a week or even a day. Some schools don't have any accreditation and they can just say, hey, do you want to work HVAC? This is no. Maybe no, and they say, oh, it's going to be hot, it's going to be hard work. After they've already convinced them to go to school, they convince them not to get a job in HVAC. And then they'll say, oh, well, since you don't want to work in HVAC, we'll call that a waiver. So we're going to count you as placed even though you're not placed because we convinced you not to come in. Those schools that can say whatever they want. Hey, look, your placement rate's 95%. We have this high placement rate. Even though nobody's actually working, they're all waivers. There's all these little tricks these schools do, and it's very deceptive. Most schools that are accredited needs an 80% placement rate for accreditation, as well as the admissions can say, hey, look, we placed 80%. But in reality, that number is typically much lower. And there's other games they play as well. For example, hey, you're working at a hardware store. Did you get to work in whatever section? Now that you've worked in that section, oh, hey, we're going to count that as placed. One school I went to, he actually worked over at McDonald's, and they had him work with the manager to be able to control the thermostat. Now they got him placed. All kinds of really dirty stuff. A lot of these schools that's been shut down, I've seen this happen over and over and over. And then they send every student to every job. So you get some employers that just so unhappy with the students they're getting that they don't know anything. The rock star students are getting these base plain jobs where they're cutting corners and they're like, hey, this is not what I signed up for. I thought I was going to be learning stuff and being a technician. And sometimes those students, they end up with the worst jobs because whoever happened to be hiring at the time, and career services just sent them wherever. So it's really dirty and it's really sad how that works. Now these career services people aren't bad people. They're just trying to survive and make a living so they can pay rent and stuff too. So it's just how that system ends up because the school itself is a business that happens to be a school. The other thing is, once you get a job, you're placed. Hey, congratulations, we got you a job. I had some students who were unhappy with the school or unhappy with the job they got. Like, well, we got you a job, didn't we? Well, then we're done. And even though the student didn't stay with that job or only stayed at that job a few weeks, like, yeah, we're good enough, we'll call in place. Or you got unemployment during that time, that still counts as you were getting income, so you still got the job. So very dirty how that happens. And once the student's placed, a lot of times they don't help them get another job. They come back to the school, hey, I didn't get that job. Well, we'll see what we can find for you. And then nothing happens, and that student spent all this money going to school. They spent anywhere from $8,000 to $20,000, and now they're having to pay back a student loan debt, and now they're working back at fast food or Walmart, whatever they were doing before, and now they're making that same money, but they have to pay back this loan. It's absolutely horrifically sad. So yeah, sometimes we change lives for the better. Sometimes we change lives for the worse by saddling people with the debt and not giving them the education and not giving them the placement and roping them into signing up something they were not ready for. Had employers be like, hey, this guy doesn't know anything. I want to put him back into the class. And the student comes back in, but because they don't have to have the grade and because they're kind of roped in at the first place, they don't really have the drive for it. And usually they end up just quitting or dropping out. So it's very sad to see. It actually kills an instructor's spirit when you see these people work so hard and they're just dumped out here at the end. And then you have the tool situation. They're only going to give you those tools if you do what they say or if you do what they want you to. And if you leave them a bad review, they may not give you those tools at all. Also, those tools you're going to find out very quickly they're not anything like you need. So you're going to be spending another significant amount of money, several $1,000s, getting the tools you need to be able to keep that job. So it's a huge investment. Now you're trying to pay off this loan and the private loan and also pay off tools that you're going to have to buy as well. And it can be very challenging. Now HVAC, once you get past that first year, you start moving up and there's lots and lots of potential. But a lot of these schools, not all of them, there's some good schools out there. Don't get me wrong, there's good schools out there. There are some for-profit schools that are doing a great job and really care about the education and got great instructors, but there's also these schools out there that are very bad and you have to really watch out for them. Also, you got to watch out for schools that end up being closed. What happens is you want to go to school and you go get a student loan to pay for your school. So you've gotten a loan, the school has their money for your education, right? So it sounds good. But then the school starts cutting more of these corners and eventually they get caught or somebody finally has a whistleblower. And I tell you, being a whistleblower is not easy because these people that have done it, they've lost their entire career. The people that have actually called in and said, hey, this isn't right, they've gone through and been really, really subject to a lot of pressure from the industry. So no, they don't want anybody whistleblowing. So whistleblowing is a very difficult thing. But so finally they come in and say, hey, this government needs to come in and look at this. Government comes in and says, oh my gosh, this is really bad. We are no longer going to give student loan money for your enrolled students. All right, so now it shouldn't be a big deal because they've already received money for your education, but the school doesn't work like that. What they do is they've already spent that money and they need the new people enrolling to pay for your school going through. So what happens is an authority comes in and says, hey, we're no longer going to give you funding for these new students coming in. The school can't afford to stay open. So they immediately file bankruptcy, close down or whatever. So now people that's paid for an education that have a loan that they have to pay back, that if the school's already got their money to deliver that education, the school's not going to deliver it because they're still counting on chickens that haven't hatched yet. So it's a big, huge problem of these schools and how they work. And some of these schools aren't even accredited. They simply have a loan. They're still saddling with a debt, but that debt is going to be you have to pay it back. And when you're not in an accredited school, you don't get to write that off with any kind of a tax break or anything else. And also there's a lot of other things that go with that. So you got to be careful when you're going and looking for these schools. Some of these for-profit schools are great programs, but these are the secrets they don't want you to know. So you may want to save this video or download this, because I imagine it's a matter of time before one of these schools come in with their big, powerful lawyers trying to shut me up. And I'm a nobody. I'm just a guy here that believes in education and believes in helping people. I believe in all these instructors out there that are fighting so hard to try to give that student the education they paid for. I feel their pain. I've been there many times. Unfortunately, I've been on the administration side as well. I've been the program director where I've buckled to the pressure from admissions. I've buckled from the school owners, and I've made the horrible decision to put somebody in front of that class that wasn't qualified. I too have dirty hands, and I have to live with that. I thought, man, if I can just do the bigger picture. I've talked to students that want to enroll. Oh no, it's going to be a great program. It's going to be good. I've watered down the education for the bigger picture of, well, if I get more students enrolled, I'll have a bigger budget to do better things to really teach with. And I myself have dirty hands, and I'm going to have to live with that too. But ultimately, I think that some people need to at least know the truth. This still may be the best bet for you. You may be in a situation where, hey, look, everything that's happening, this is still the choice for you. This school is going to be the choice for you. Knowing that, though, you get to make that decision, and that's okay. If you know the facts going into it, it does help you. A key is, if a school is accredited, you do have one little bit of help. All these schools, if they're accredited, they have to have something hanging on the wall that says they're accredited, and they have a grievance policy. And if you get enough people following that grievance policy, and you have to follow it by letter, and you have to document everything, you can force a change. In other words, the accrediting company is going to have to come in and step in, otherwise they're going to be in trouble. And the school will then have to make a change too to make sure they're meeting that. Now, if it's only one or two people, they're going to attack that person everything they can. But if there's enough people involved, they can make a difference. Also, every school is accredited by state. You're going to have a state accreditation. Even if a school is not accredited, there's going to be some body overseeing every school. If enough people start writing letters to the schools, hey, we're not getting the education, we're not getting the supplies, we're not getting the hands-on, we've been promised these things and they're not being delivered. We have an instructor that's not qualified. He's a nice guy, he's a great guy, but he's just simply not qualified to teach this class. He doesn't have any field experience whatsoever. These are things that can cause a change. You can start writing these different people. You can start writing these companies. You can start writing your congressman, and you start getting the attention out to it. Ideally, we can make these for-profit schools actually do what they're supposed to do. Now, the ones that's already doing what they're supposed to do, great. They don't need to make any changes. But these out here specifically trying to take advantage of all these students, take advantage of the instructors, put these people in bad positions, so that they can make that money. We need to get focused on the education. Sure, make a profit, but let's deliver the education that's out there. So now hopefully you know what to look for. And if you're in that situation where you're not getting education, there's some things you can do. I want to provide some links below about how some of these for-profit, what you call predatory schools, work. I just want everybody to have the option of the truth. So this is some of my story. It actually goes way deeper than this, but this is just some of the things that we deal with education.